Today we're going to focus on battery enclosures. So on the screen here, this is the enclosure for the Corvette project. These are our Volkswagen battery modules inside here, 8 of them. Whenever I'm starting to design and think about a battery enclosure, I really work with 3 fundamental ideas in mind. Number one should always be number one. First and foremost is safety. That is safety, talking like collision protection, but also safety for the occupants, safety for road hazards, and, you know, almost more importantly than anything, safety for anybody who's going to be working on the car. So if this ever has to have mechanics working on this car, it needs to be completely safe for people to be working on it and clearly understood how the power comes in and out of this battery pack. So safety is number one. Number 2 is serviceability. So how easy this drops out of the bottom of the car, how easily each one of these modules can be replaced individually. Yeah, how serviceable this battery is over the lifetime of the car. And then lastly, I take into consideration weight and balance. So where this is placed in the car, how well it's balanced. So our focus is going to be making the enclosure here and then machining all of these little isolators, these separator plates that make our individual module bays. So what we're going to do is I've got all of these pieces laser cut already. This is laser cut from 1/8 inch aluminum, so 125 aluminum. We're going to fold these in the press brake, and you can see how with a couple of different folds, it has essentially created a box with a giant flange on it. I've already had all of these holes lasered into the aluminum, so this should go into a fixture real nice. They'll all line up nice, and you can see how they overlap each other. So when I build, I'll build all 4 of these separately, weld these out, and then when it comes time to assemble them, I think what I'm going to do is rather than have a fixture that assembles this entire thing, I'm going to use the chassis itself as the fixture. But then you get an idea how one of these overlaps the other one, and they kind of key into each other, and then they're located with that hole in the center. So as long as I don't screw up the bending of this, the fabricating of this, this should essentially clip together and locate and make this a perfect corner-to-corner joint. So first things first, we're going to get these bent up. We're going to weld those out. We're going to machine up these little chunks, these separator plates, and these are our standoffs that the batteries bolt to. So those will get machined, and then we'll weld this all together. So since we're already in the CAD environment, we'll just make a print of all of our dimensions here. The important ones are very important that I need to know the distance between this flange or this outer surface here and this wall. So that's a very important bend distance, the same as this up here. So I got to really nail where that bend is, otherwise these suckers won't line up. So we'll rip off a print and then we'll head over to the press brake. Okay, so we pulled our dimensions off the CAD model. None of this aluminum has etched bend marks on it like I do with the steel. So what I do is I just pull dimensions off the CAD model. I know what my finished bend needs to be. So I just bend a couple of little test coupons just until I nail this dimension that I have in the CAD model, and then I'll bend the real part. So we'll set up for this first bend. These parts are going to need 2 different bends in them. So I got this first one set up for our first bend. We'll measure it, see how close we are to there, make adjustments accordingly, and then we have our back gauge set. So let's bend the first one and see what we got. So we got our 90-degree bend, and we just measure this. we're just slightly long of our dimensions, so do some math and readjust this and try bending another little test. Okay, so this is our inside, this is our outside that we just bent. If we followed the dimensions on the CAD exactly, this should line up here. So the idea is, with these folds in it, we're creating a box all the way around this with a flange on it. And all we need to do is weld one corner to corner joint, and we've created this entire part. So we line up our bolt holes here, tabs up here, there, and you can see what we got is a box with a big flange on it. So we got our parts lined up. You can see that corner to corner joint. So all I need to do is put one weld along there, and I've created this entire structure out of two pieces of aluminum bent to whatever profile I needed. You can notice I do have those line up tabs on this part as well. Holds that corner to corner joint real nice for me. So I've got a fixture already made for the longer side. This is the shorter of the sides. So I've got one back in the weld shop already fixtured up. I'll show you guys what that fixture looks like, and then we'll weld these together. Okay, so my fixture is just a big chunk of tubing. I've got it drilled and tapped. So what I did was, on the bottom side of this, I bolted these two together, cinched them to this giant tube, and then I can just clamp at every one of these spots to hold my dimensions. This big tube acts like a gigantic heat sink. It's pulling the heat away from the aluminum as I weld it, so it's less prone to warping. And then because it is bolted along the bottom, we're not going to turn this thing into a big banana. This needs to be pretty straight and accurate at the end of it, so nice solid fixture's key. Okay, like always, what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to melt these little tabs first. It'll hold our part the corner to corner, and then I'll start at one end and I'll weld this whole thing out, and we'll leave it in this fixture. But I can take the majority of these clamps off after I have these tacked in. So let's get to welding. Okay, we're going to start at this end and we're going to weld down this whole sucker. Not too bad for a dirty mechanic. Okay, I'm gonna let this cool down fully in this fixture while it's still bolted to this. Once it's fully cooled, we'll start welding up the short little ones. So with all our pieces bent up, since this is still kind of a low volume car, I'm not going to make huge numbers of these. Rather than taking the shop space to make a fixture for this battery tray, I thought I might as well use the chassis that I got as the fixture itself anyway, because ultimately that's where it needs to bolt to. So these are all of our bent pieces. What I did was I bolted them to the chassis loose. So what I mean by that is they're bolted to the chassis, but they're not welded in the corners. So I can get everything fit exactly where it is going to end up in real life in the chassis, using this big chassis as its fixture itself. So first thing we're going to do is, now that I've got that bolted in, we've got it squared. Everything is square and level where the perimeter case needs to be. We're going to outfit it with the pieces that we machined. So these are the battery separators that we machined. These are the little feet that bolt to the bottom side of this. This will all be fully welded, but this is our battery dimension. So our batteries actually bolt to these separator plates. We got our print here. So we're working off of this print for the from the CAD design. And what I will do is I'm going to start laying out these battery, I guess, compartments, if you will, battery bays for all of these cells for the modules. I got this stuff laser cut. I had 2 battery blanks made up. So these things here, these are the dimensions of our cells, but I don't need to work with the cell itself because obviously there's a bunch of welding that needs to happen here, and I want the cells nowhere near that when I'm welding it. So this just gives me a super lightweight option with the exact mounting dimensions for the batteries. All right, I'm gonna get the 4 of these placed. I'm gonna weld the corners first, so I'm gonna weld out fully down the corners, get this perimeter secured into place, get this cross beam welded in. Then we'll lay out our 4 battery separators to create our bays. And finally we'll start with fitting the cells into place and make sure that I didn't screw this up royally. Okay, got some welding to do. All right, cool, those fit in real good. So you'll really notice with these 8 in here that there was a lot of consideration given for safety of the battery pack, side impact protection particularly. God forbid this thing was ever in an accident, but I've got the frame rail, the entire size of the battery pack, the whole height of the battery pack, as its primary protection. Then there is a little bit of an air gap in here, and then the structure itself for the battery pack, the case. Not only that, but internally there is this structure that spreads the load throughout. So if you were to have any sort of side impact, it would take a hell of a hit to deform this whole battery pack and cause some sort of a problem. This does drop out the bottom just like OEM, so it's very serviceable, and then every module is individually replaceable. I do have this channel down the center. This is where my high voltage contactors are going to go. All of my batteries are orientated that my high voltage connections are all here in the middle. So I got very short runs of wire that I need to bridge these batteries together, and then I can put my high voltage contactors in BMS modules, and then I have power out for the 2 motors. Really all I got to do now is put a cover on the top of this and then populate it with some electronics that I haven't ordered yet, so I got that to figure out. In the meantime, you will notice I got the 2 motors hung in this. I have all of my front cross member back from laser cut, so I think I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to build this front cross member. The front cross member has my lower control arm mounts, another front motor mount, my rack mount. There's a bunch of stuff that kind of takes care of in the front, so I can finalize my front suspension design. And then I've got my 2 big chunks of aluminum. I can start milling out the 2 front knuckles. And yeah, maybe the next update will be doing some front suspension or maybe some rear suspension design. I'm trying to make a video on each system as I'm building it. Sometimes it turns into 2 videos if it turns out to be way too long, but let me know if you like this format. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you like what it's turning out to be so far. Any questions? For sure leave me a comment. I try to answer as many as possible. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Thanks for checking it out, guys.